Welcome back and happy Tuesday, coming to you remotely again. Given everything that's going on, we have another fascinating topic for you this week. It's also very relevant with what's happening in the times all around the future of SMB lending. As you all know, that world is a bit crazy right now. It's something that I've been spending a lot of time looking at and thinking about. So I thought, who better to discuss this than a longtime friend in Jorge Soon, who is the CEO and founder of Lending Front. And so Jorge, thank you for being here with me. Really appreciate it. And happy to see you again.
Yeah, pleasure. Happy to see you as well.
Absolutely. So this topic is huge. Why don't we just start with, tell us a little bit about who Lending Front is, and we'll go from there.
Sure. The quick soundbite is Lending Front is a technology platform that helps banks modernize and digitize their small business lending operations. How to acquire customers, how to underwrite them, how to service them.
Got it. And obviously, you and I have known each other for a long time. You have a vast experience and history in the space, from on deck to Cap One to many other roles. We had the opportunity to get to know each other very well, as you were a finalist and winner for BBVA's Open Talent back when I was at BBVA. And you know how close you and Dario are to me. And so I'm so happy to be, not happy. I'm happy to see your face. This is not necessarily a happy topic right now, but one that is definitely relevant. So before we start diving into the current world of what's going on, let's take a step back for a second and get a little bit retrospective. So most lending is still done on the small business side, face-to-face. Why do you think the adoption of digital for small business lending has been slower than that of the consumer side?
Sure. I think that is just a basic byproduct of the business model that most banks and credit unions have adopted, which is a banker-led originations and relationship model. Right? Which basically means I have a highly trained individual that will find a business that needs financial advice, and lending is a component of that. The key elements that a small business needs, it's, deposit product, right? Merchant services, treasury management, which is money movement, and then lending. And most banks have basically always left that up to a banker. And what most people don't realize is that, there are about 5,000 banks, and the long tail of banks are sort of these small banks that basically function as, sort of small institutions that are led by a group of bankers that essentially build a portfolio, right? And they don't have modern technology like the big banks. So basically, they haven't really invested in trying to modernize serving the small business. Because when you and I think about small business, we think mom and pop, walk down Main Street. But when you ask sort of these bankers what small business to them, they're really thinking of almost middle market type size companies, right? With, 50 employees, 100 employees looking to borrow $1 million, not looking to borrow 25,000.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see that classification all the time. You're very accurate there. Typically like, oh yeah, we want more small business clients. And so you ask what that actually looks like. And it's so far away from what maybe you and I, or people who are used to the real small businesses are actually thinking about. So we've got to just dive in here because it's so relevant to what's happening now. And I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, how has COVID impacted SMB lending at a high level? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I'll give an example. So the whole reason Lending Front exists, right, is to basically help banks do something that they don't do today, right? But it has literally, really highlighted the gap now, right? Which is, because banks are a banker-driven process, bankers are expensive. They're only going to go after the largest businesses that they can help, right? And because of that, the type of business they can service basically is limited, right? Basically, they want to have a profitable relationship. So if a business is looking to borrow $25,000, banks tend to really ignore them, right? And statistics say basically, if you look at whatever numbers, that there was about $100 billion worth of capital demand from small businesses, right? These are people looking to borrow less than 100,000. But with COVID, I mean, if you just simply take that existing gap and plus what the government's saying they want to put back in, I mean, that's $500 million, right? I'm sorry, $500 billion, $500 billion worth of demand that now can't be met. And the problem is, if you think about the 25 million small businesses in the US, basically all of them have been impacted. How are they going to get capital, right? Are they all going to go to the branch and talk to their banker? No, because they can't go, right? And banks don't have a digital solution to allow them to apply, self-serve. So basically, it's just creating a massive problem, because if you wrap it into what's happening with COVID, and you see what all banks are doing, I mean, JP Morgan just said that they stopped all lending, right? The only thing they're doing is something that is government-backed lending. And if you think about how banks will approach this, if from my experience as a banker, or at JP Morgan Capital One, and going through sort of the great recession that happened in '07, is you begin to prioritize your customer base, right? Especially your lenders, right? Who you lend to, from most profitable to least profitable, biggest. And if you look at what COVID is, basically you can have up to 500 employees, right? These are pretty big companies, right? There is no revenue size limit, right? Just employee size. And you can borrow up to 10 million. So what's happening is most banks are basically saying, no lending. Let's look at our business relationships. Let's rank them based on sort of exposure, right, and possible, value to us. And then the bankers are working, down the list of, okay, how do we give them one of these SBA guaranteed loans? The problem is this smashes into the whole problem of, 20% of your customers are 80% of your revenue, right? And then you have this massive long tail. And the problem is that the massive long tail are what you and I think about as the true small businesses, right? The small businesses that wants only 25, 100,000. They are the ones that are not getting, the supply. Or if they do get it, it's going to be much later, right? Until, the bank gets to them. Why? Because again, it's all banker driven.
It absolutely is. And it's the last week, a little more than a week, I guess, has been very telling. I'm certainly part of a lot of Slack and LinkedIn and other groups on the banking side, and then on the fintech side, which is, some of these small businesses talking about these aspects and the inconsistencies and the lack of communication and information is certainly appalling. But I just want to get your perspective, 30 seconds or less here. If we think of what's happening with the PPP program, do you think it's effective? Will it be effective? Yes or no? And then 30 seconds on why or why not.
I think it will be effective to certain customers, right? It will be effective to customers that want to sort of bridge, 4 months of lost revenue, right? And want to keep their customers. Where it will not be effective, in short, is sort of what happens post-COVID, right? And is that capital enough, right, for them to be able to continue as the going concern? Because if you think about what COVID is, in concept, is saying, look, you got an impact. Here's money for you to keep your employees. We expect that impact will instantaneously disappear, and you're going to go back to the same revenue level. But that's not the way it's going to happen.
No, it's more like putting a Band-Aid on the wound without addressing what actually happened. You fell, you're bleeding without identifying the cause of the insertion. Then you just say, oh, here's a Band-Aid. It will fix it. You won't bleed for a second, but depending on what happened, there could be a lot of different things there. So totally agree. I mean, we could sit here and speak for hours on this, and I love hearing your thoughts because you're so close to this. But let's go ahead and wrap this up. Jorge, thank you so much for spending the time, giving us your thoughts on this. I'm sure maybe we'll have you back next month, because between now and then, what's normally a month is going to be a lifetime in this current era, and we'll see what happens. But really appreciate your perspective. For everyone, please click on the links below. You will see Jorge's full background. You can find more about his perspective, some details on Lending Front and where Lending Front fits in this equation, and what the future of PPP and small business lending in COVID looks like. So thank you so much, and until next week.